Today on the Treatment Forum, I have the amazing photographer director Louise Palmberg. We're also on the same roster as art class because we have a lot in common. We both, I think, I'm a photographer and director. I don't know if you started out as a photographer, but that's sort of my trajectory. And I think you have probably so much insights on sharing the treatment process, what that looks like for you, and maybe how it's evolved. Do a lot of food and beverage work, really
Yeah.
beautiful, juicy, delicious, delectable tabletop work.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat a little bit more kind of about the intersection between photo and live action treatments.
As a photographer, those types of treatments and those types of pitches, do you feel like they're vastly different than, kind of moving into directing? And is there a are they a lot more thorough, or how do you feel like the pitch process for you has changed or shifted, or is it relatively the same?
It definitely depends a little bit on the size of the project, I would say. Even for a small scale motion project, I'll still work through a really extensive treatment process, while on a small scale stills production or stills pitch, sometimes I would not, or sometimes I'll make something pretty condensed. And I don't know if you feel the same, but sometimes I feel like on small scale photo pitches, it's a little bit more condensed of a process.
Yeah, when treatments kind of trickled down into at least my photography process, it was very much like, presenting, mainly focusing on presenting your own work and, a
Yeah.
mood board and just kind of, expressing how your take on things. But I feel like a director's treatment is much more like blown out, and it's really expressing a vision in a way that um it's it's kind of impossible to only pull from your own work. You have to
Yes.
really search the interwebs for everything. So yeah, for me it feels like it's much more thorough. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you feel about things now.
Yeah, I started out as a photographer, and so I started in stills and then expanded into motion. Now I do both, and that was definitely a little bit of a an adjustment when I started making motion treatments, because like you said, in stills it's you pull so much or exclusively from your own work, and then going into these motion treatments, it's I would be like, I don't have anything like that in my archive. And but for motion treatments, like you said, it's you scour the entire web trying to find the perfect reference that perfectly visualizes exactly what it is you want to express. But with the that was definitely a bit of a transition when I went and started doing more motion.
Yeah, yeah. And when did you kind of start shifting into directing?
I started shooting stills more so editorially, and I was shooting a lot of restaurants. So I live in New York City. I'm based in New York, and I was shooting a lot of restaurants and went into commercial work through there. And so I started directing, I want to say around 2018, 2019, something like that. And so I still feel so new in the game, and I'm still learning so much every day. I feel like every project teaches me something new, and that's why I love that you're doing this and that you're doing this, this channel, and kind of shining a little bit of light on the process, because it is, for me, it was very much learning on the as I go, and I'm still learning. But yeah, I love that you're doing this to kind of create some transparency.
When you get a brief and you sort of, take a look at the creative, whether it has like storyboards or not, maybe it's just kind of a mood board. Where do you begin in your process?
by asking a lot of questions on the creative call, I would say.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's definitely that would definitely be my starting process, trying to take really extensive notes and just picking up their vibe and trying to get a feel on the initial call what direction they're trying to go in and where that intersects with my ideas. But then as I start actually putting together the treatment or the pitch, I would say I really try to think kind of holistically on what I can bring to the project, and if there are any cool ideas that I wanna suggest, and trying to get a feel if the creative team are open to a lot of ideas, or if they're pretty set on what they want to do. That's something that I find very important. But then, yeah, once I start the treatment, I definitely, yeah, try to start to think holistically, try to break it down into different categories on to see what the best way to express my vision, because that's something that is difficult. It's like you have this idea in your head that if you just got to execute it, you can make it happen, but you actually have to sell it through in words to a secondary team, or especially the client. And so learning how to express that has been that's been a real learning process for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about something so visual and then you have to put words to it, and maybe the spot isn't on your reel, I mean,
Yeah.
likely it's not, and that's a good thing because you're creating something original. And to try to, put words to something, it can feel very um like lofty and very, imaginative and very obscure, and you're trying to pinpoint it, but it's also something that is hard to put words to a lot of times. um
Yeah.
and especially that, it's sometimes if you're talking to creatives, you're talking to clients, they probably don't really resonate with technical terms. So even if you got really specific about like the techniques that you were doing, it might just go like way over their head.
Hmm.
So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's something that I I try to figure out early in the process too, is how I can relate to the project. And because sometimes it can be for a product or a brand that I have never worked for before, or maybe it's an industry that I've never worked in before. And I think finding that personal connection and figuring out where I come in, I know that sounds super self-centered, but just figuring out how to make it personal in a way, because I think that's the best way to make a good campaign, is to make it personal and to make it relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's bringing yourself into the, yeah, connecting to the brand, I think is something that's really critical, because then you can really write from that point of view, or you can speak from that point of view. Have you ever bid on a project where you had no idea who the brand was, or you were having trouble sort of connecting to it, or was that ever a struggle for you, or have you always just kind of found your way into speaking about something? It's almost like you have to find a way to care about, what they're doing, and you have to wrap your brain around that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is absolutely the case. Yeah, I've definitely done that in the past. I was pitching on something that was for like an industrial cleaning company,
Oh,
and you just gotta make your path and carve out a piece of you in there to make it relatable and to, care and to really get into the project.
yeah, I think that's an art form of an in and of itself. When, I've done some stuff for like a law firm, and I was like, how do I connect to this? But, we all need lawyers at some point in our life, potentially. So you hope not. But So yeah, that is the art form of finding the connection to a brand that, maybe doesn't immediately kind of excite you, like
Yeah,
insurance or something. But then
exactly.
you can find the humor, or you can find the beauty in the story or the authenticity, because everything is an element of life, slices of life in a way. Um, do you feel like you've been, or this is sort of something I'm always kind of interested in, is if you know that you are not the preferred bidder, or you know that you're the long shot, maybe the people you're bidding against, they're the preferred, or they have the spot on the reel or something. Do you just say no to the project? Do you walk away? Do you go wholeheartedly and present your opinion? Have you been in the position where you knew that you perhaps were the underdog and then you shifted it in your favor? I'm always like looking for those hero stories, because it's tough when maybe you're the third bidder, and your reel isn't exactly on the nose.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation, and if I am, I will probably amp it up even more. I'll go 150% into it because I am a very stubborn person in general, and I am just, if I know I'm the underdog, I'm gonna give it my all to try to shift their opinion. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And especially if you're on a pitch, and I'm sure you've been in the same position where you're bidding against a director that's had the account or had the client for years and years and years, it can be daunting, and it can be um it can feel challenging. And I think that that is another extremely important position where you find yourself, where you really have to throw yourself into it and really have to give it your all, especially um just really try to get the passion across, I
Okay.
think. But at the same time, it's like at the same time you have to always protect your, your sanity and your emotions and your mental health, because
Hmm.
sometimes you are the third bidder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's like a perfect segue to talking about losing. We all win, we all lose. And, you have to learn to lose, and you have to kind of treat it like an exercise, or just like keep your head up, because I mean, you can be so invested, especially when you spend so much time on something. Like, what is the average amount of time that you put into a treatment these days?
I mean, it depends on how long of a timeline we
Yeah.
have.
Oh, yeah. You
Sometimes
take up all the time. If you have a
some
week,
if I have a
right.
week, I'll give it a week. If I have 24 hours, I will write when I'm asleep. I mean, it's so much time. There's so much time you put into this, and that is something that is has been definitely a learning curve. It's like like you said, it's you put hours and hours and hours. Wasn't it the Free the Bid who did the
Oh,
director's survey about the
yes.
average time and money spent on a treatment? And you learn to love a project, and you become
I know.
so intimate. And I think that I'm bidding on this thing right now, and I was dreaming about it last night because I'm just so in it right now. And
Yeah.
it's you spend so much time.
Yeah, that is funny how I do when I'm trying to solve a problem, or I'm trying to come up with something refreshing to kind of add to a pitch. I do sort of lean on, like, I'll kind of read some of my treatment like before I go to bed, and then it'll help my subconscious will kind of help me. I mean, it doesn't always work, it's not like a tried and true method, but yeah, that it's interesting, because you're right. We do throw ourselves in it from all angles, and so we do become invested in it, and it's hard to accept when we lose. But it's at the same time, how do you diversify your attention? Because if you didn't wholeheartedly put yourself into it, maybe it would come across in the treatment. Like maybe it wouldn't be all there. Maybe it would seem like you're missing something or you don't get the idea. So it's hard
Yeah.
to know, how much to throw yourself into something, and if it's going to come across authentically.
Yeah. And I think that it definitely comes across if you don't devote yourself completely, especially for agency creatives who have been working on these accounts for months or years sometimes, and these
Hmm.
campaigns have gone through rounds and rounds of approvals, and it's their baby. And
Yeah.
so uh, coming across as not being fully invested, I think is very clear. So I have no choice but to throw myself into it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's spot on. Um, when you get started, since we're both come from more of a visual point of view, do you start with like sourcing visuals, or do you start with writing, or do you have writers that you work with that write for you, or yeah, what does that look like?
I start with the writing, and I usually start making a kind of, I'm trying to think. I guess you call it like a mind map. I
Oh, that's cool.
I
Yeah.
feel like I haven't been in school for a long time, but I feel like that's how I used to write essays when I was in school. But I'll just start kind of jotting down words or associations or just thoughts or sometimes full sentences that come to me. I just start like writing it all out in like bullet point form.
Mhm.
And usually a loose structure starts to emerge. And
Yeah.
I have certain pillars that try to hit in every treatment. And so usually buckets or categories or themes, chapters start to emerge. Some
Yeah.
are unique for each treatment. Some are um reoccurring, like camera techniques, lighting quality, visual aesthetic, colors, edit, that kind of thing. And but then some categories or chapters definitely are unique for each treatment.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, I think in the beginning, because I shifted from photography, I was sort of always so focused on pulling the visuals, but it's almost like I was avoiding the hard part because we are such natural, image makers. And
Yeah.
now I've shifted to like get into like, don't let the writing kind of escape you because immediately after that call, like everything's super fresh. So I want to capture that before I lose, the ideas that are kind of spinning in my mind. But yeah,
Yeah.
before it kind of was going back and forth, but now I like try to create a much more structured approach, so I can just like flow in a way that's more organized. Um,
Yeah. For
yeah.
some reason, my workflow has definitely shifted a little bit between stills pitches and motion pitches because I would
Mm,
say for a stills pitch, my first my first line of thinking is often visuals, and I might make a mood board, I might pull a bunch of references to kind of try to hash out common themes within, while in for motion I definitely do writing first.
mhm. Do you feel like do you not use film stills for photography treatments? Um, is that something that you stay away from? Because it probably doesn't have the same light quality, right? Like it doesn't have the kind of strobe like aesthetic.
Yeah, I definitely think that it can be tricky finding the right lighting quality for stills, especially if we're working within a very hyper stylized look. Where I think that especially your work as well is it's so stylized, and it can be difficult finding film stills and motion references that reflect that.
Yeah.
So I would say that I definitely tend to gravitate towards pulling stills for the photography specific pitches. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like your photography pictures are a lot shorter than just naturally because obviously they don't have a script involved. Like I don't imagine they would be a lot tighter in length.
Definitely depends on the project.
Oh,
I
okay.
think yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was on this like 75 page stills treatment recently.
No
Um
way.
so it
Whoa.
definitely depends on the project and how extensive the campaign is. For something like that, it was like, it was like a very multi-layered campaign that had many moving parts and technical qualities as well, or technical challenges as well.
Okay.
And that definitely requires some explanation sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean that's really fascinating because, and been having this conversation actually as I've been talking to directors about the length of things, and it kind of all started with my friend Oren, who maybe Oren and Jordan, who had mentioned that the new thing is to do shorter treatments because creatives don't have time to read them, and also it's just too lengthy. It's like overwhelming, and so I've been trying to merge my process back to like tighter treatments but yeah, I think it really depends on the creative. Like sometimes they really love something that's full blown out, really long, and sometimes they're overwhelmed by that. So you can't really know. But
Yeah,
that's very interesting. That oh, sorry.
I think that for that treatment specifically, there were so many technical challenges that had to be tackled.
Yeah.
Um, and so there were so many visual references. So there wasn't that much text, but there were just so many references that had to be pulled. But
Yeah.
yes, in terms of length, I definitely agree. I think that something I'm being asked for a lot now is, you're on this super short timeline and someone asks you, they're like, can you just pull together a one pager? Which is A, never one page,
I
and
know.
B, it is never just a one pager, because
Right.
finding the tone and finding the visual direction in itself is tricky, and it never it's never just an easy thing. So although it just can sound simple and quick, it's never simple and quick.
Yeah, actually, I've encountered the term treatlet, which is like a mini treatment, and it's been mainly for like repeat clients that don't need a full blown out pitch, or I've heard it come across in like music video treatments where they're like, just give us like
Interesting.
a 5 to 10 pager. But yeah, the one page is like, what can that even be? Just a mood board, sure. That's really
Exactly.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it always ends up being 5 to 10 pages.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Do you because I think you have separate photo reps outside of art class, I believe, or outside of your production companies that you work with?
So I actually have, so I do a lot of the split productions. So I do a lot of stills and motion, specifically right now. And
Hmm.
so art class has been doing that, helping me with those. And
Oh,
then
cool.
yeah, it's been great having a production company that's so structured and has those capabilities to really take on those multifaceted projects, because
Yeah.
they are so different and so separate. But then I also have different reps in Europe as well, who help me with the stills and the motion over there.
Hmm. Do you feel like the interaction between your teams, like do they advise you through the treatment, or do they say like, oh, this might be missing, or this feels a little off? Like, do you feel like there's kind of a back and forth there, or it just really depends?
That's definitely what I want, and so that's definitely what I ask for, the back and forth, because
Yeah.
I'm just one person in my head, and
Yeah.
as like I can think through something for so long, and if I don't have another person to bounce ideas and comments off of, it can become a little bit of like an echo chamber in there, and so
Yeah.
having having a team that has opinions and feedback is so important for me to kind of clarify ideas and making sure that it comes across as digestible information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's such a good point because there's also a lot of like duo teams and sort of directors, photographers that where there's two people and like maybe one is more of a director, one's more of a creative director, or one's more technical DP and one's more, and it's so interesting because when you are working like we are and it's just all of ourselves focused on this idea, I can't really imagine not having a team to bounce it off of. Otherwise, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
trails into my personal relationships, and I'm talking to my, partner, and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Just like casually, like in the kitchen. I'm like, "So, would you approach something like this?" And just you just need, about a sounding board, totally.
Yeah.
So I think having any team to just kind of think through, like, is this crazy? I've just been thinking about this one idea for so long, you know. Am I coming at it the right way or am I just overthinking it? Is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm jealous of the directing duos every day because I'm like, wow, I need to I talk so much to my partner about ideas and solutions and solves, and I mean, I think he likes it. I really hope he enjoys my rambling sometimes.
Is he in a creative field?
He's in production, so he
Oh,
gets
okay.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
totally.
so he understands it, and he is an amazing collaborator, honestly, because
Oh, that's so cool.
he yeah, he doesn't I don't think he minds being a sounding board, but I absolutely utilize him.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think, what type of advice would you give? Like, what would you give advice to your younger self? Like, what have you learned, over the course of the last few years about the pitch process that maybe you wish you knew or you would advise somebody starting out in the game?
Probably to seek out like education and classes similar exactly what you're doing, and trying to figure out the ins and outs of the process, because it can be so daunting and difficult to navigate, especially when sometimes it feels like you're just being thrown into it and you just try to figure it out. And I think that doing the research and trying to learn as much as possible ahead of time, I think that is really important. I mean, I remember I feel like I was somewhat thrown into the kind of directing portion where from stills, and I wasn't I don't think that I was quite prepared how different it is between stills and motion, because it is a completely different beast and the process in pitching is different. And so I wish um I wish I had been a little bit more prepared, I would say, or just learned a little bit more about the formal pitching process.
Yeah, me too. I mean, what when I started merging into doing a lot more directing projects, I didn't really understand the why you would do a treatment call and why you were like pitching,
Mm-hmm.
talking through the treatment, which I realized, I mean, obviously in hindsight, like it's so helpful. I'm so grateful when I do get to talk to the agency creatives and we can hash out what they resonate with. But when I
Mm-hmm.
was doing photography treatments, it was never a thing to like, okay, let's talk about the pitch that I put together. And so
Yeah.
that was something huge that I didn't know was like a just normal formality that really does serve you. And originally, I just wasn't used to that. And so I kind of had to wrap my brain around that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I still sometimes struggle on like the pitchback calls, when you're pitching your treatment, especially just talking for 40 minutes straight and trying to, not sound like I'm giving a presentation in school.
I
It's uh
know.
it's a transition.
Totally. Yeah, I'm always looking to refine it and try to set it up like a conversation because it's just brutal just to be talking at people for that long and like hope that it's resonating or you just want to know you want some reaction from your audience. Like, do they get it? Is it interesting? Should I pause
Yes.
for questions? It is, yeah, it can be kind of rough to just get in that mindset and entertain them, for 40 minutes. Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be really hard. And sometimes I feel like I get a little bit stuck in it and I think too hard. And then I try to think ahead and trying to get a reaction out of them instead of just feeling like I'm presenting or like I'm talking at them. And that's definitely been hard. And it's not an easy thing to do, honestly. It's a big presentation that you're having in front of, sometimes it's a big team as well on the agency side.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be anywhere from like one, two, three. It's usually like three people for me. And then sometimes I have had it about two or three times where they ask, like, can we have the client on the call? Which, makes it like you're talking to everybody at once.
Oh my God.
Um, I mean,
Yeah,
in a
that
way,
could,
oh, go ahead.
no, I mean, that can be like, 15 people.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually like it when the client's on the call because I never know what the creatives are. Like, I would love to just speak to from myself to them directly so they can hear me because I feel like there's a lot of things that get lost in translation and maybe they get stuck on one image that isn't like, hitting it on the head and then they think, "Oh, she's going to totally take it in this like dark direction." And you're like, "No, this image is there because of the action that's happening and not because of the lighting. Like, don't focus on the lighting in this one thing." And it's constantly like that shaping of the visuals that I feel like they hold on to one thing. And so I feel like if I'm there to represent myself, at least I can create a buffer or I can understand what things come up from them. So I actually do like it, but I do think that, it does feel intimidating because here you are like, I'm the best person for the job, like how does
Yeah.
it like such a weird experience. But I think I try my best to just come from an authentic point of view that I'm a problem solver and we are problem solvers. We are here to kind of help serve your idea and we're not like taking the idea from you, which I think some directors, it depends on like your approach, but I'm really collaborative. I think I think that's the fear of a lot of creatives where they have been working on this, like you said, for months at a time. And then here they go hand off their baby to somebody that's just going to go whoop, like take it into another direction. So I think
Yeah.
that is a big part of getting over like who are they comfortable with working with that's going to get what's right in their head.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do agree that sometimes when the client reads it on like one layer removed, where you don't get to talk about and explain your case, defend yourself.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
agree that sometimes, they can get stuck on this one thing and then, you might not get the job and then you get your feedback about why you didn't get the job and it's like, oh, they didn't feel like the lighting direction was right. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you, have you gotten like crazy feedback on why you lost a job? Like something that was so like off that of like, oh, you lost it because of this thing, and you were like, never would have expected that.
Um, I think that sometimes, not something that comes off the top of my head, but sometimes it can be hard to gauge how much input or how much change a creative team wants to the
Oh
creative
yeah.
itself. Like, do they want ideas? Do they want big ideas? Do they want small ideas? Do they want no ideas? And because sometimes
Right.
they want nothing changed from their script because it's their baby. They don't want any input. And sometimes they want
Broke up
bigger
just a little bit.
ideas and something that can really add a completely different tone to the film. And so that can sometimes be hard to gauge. And there's definitely been
Mhm.
times when I've missed the mark. And, maybe I've suggested something or come up with ideas and they didn't want it. They just wanted to stick to the script. And that happens.
Mhm. Yeah, that is an art form to really gauge on the creative call how much nudging you can do and how much they do want. Because I think I felt recently that a lot of creatives actually, they're almost disappointed if you don't suggest ideas and kind of shift their script.
Yeah.
And it's always a tug because then yeah, you suggest too many things and they're like, oh, she doesn't get it. So that in of itself, it's like you can't be in somebody's head. So it's almost like you sort of just have to come at it from a point of view of what do I think is going to be best for the job that I'm going to get excited about, um, because you can never really guess, but you do try as hard as you can to really understand on the creative call, like how much is their flexibility in and how much are they
Hmm.
looking for. But it is really difficult.
Yeah, and the way I go about it, and I have no idea if that's the best way to go about it, but usually before the creative call, I really try to familiarize myself with the treatment and not go into a call blind and just let them walk me through it. I really try to read through it, do my research, look at their past work, whatnot, but then I usually have some top level ideas in my head of suggestions or additions or changes. And on the call, I usually try to gauge by kind of treading carefully. I might ask them, are you open to doing XYZ? Are you open to suggestions? Are you open to camera techniques, or are you open to this and that? And see what their tone is when I ask that
Mhm.
question.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Um, I'm gonna try to wrap it up, but I feel like I'd love to hear. This is something I haven't asked yet, but what's like one of the biggest wins recently that you've been really excited about pitching through to a client that you really love the campaign and you were just really excited that you got to do the job?
I was very excited recently when I did this campaign for Aldi, the grocery store chain.
Yeah, I remember that. It's so
And
cool.
it was so
You're like motion
fun.
control, right? Like
Yeah,
all the works. Oh my God.
I know, it was really great to be able to suggest that, and to the creative team being down and them being, that was a pitch process where they were being super open to ideas, and it was a very collaborative process. And that was another pitch that I had a very easy time to really relate to and show my passion, because I'm
Hmm.
European, I'm Swedish, and
Yeah.
I love a European grocery store. And so that was, I like, we don't have Aldi in New York City, so I actually drove out to Aldi in New Jersey so I could like take some
No.
cute photos of
Oh, that's so great.
take some cute photos like me at the Aldi store like that. And just
Oh my
so
God.
just so I can get like really a really good kind of personal connection in there. But
Yeah.
we yeah, that was a big win. That was really nice, and being able to work with their creative team and get that motion control, get some cool camera effects done.
Hmm. Yeah, no, congrats. It's such a great spot and I love hearing that those like victory stories that you and just the way that you went about it, and how you can connect to the brand because I did a project for them kind of in a slightly different world and um it was one of those things where I didn't actually know that their roots were European. And then when I started to unravel, I was so like impressed by their history and so intrigued. And then I started, yeah, doing my own recon. And I like I luckily have an Aldi like 15 minutes away. And then I started kind of even diving more into, how they present themselves. So that is really, yeah, congrats. I think that's it's very exciting that I love that project. And yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful that you took the time, and I know you're, in San Francisco, so you're kind of in transit, but this was so enlightening, and I think that you've really like helped, you know, bring some light into the conversation, and just really appreciate you taking the time to chat through, how you pitch and what struggles and what triumphs you've gone through. So this has been really, really helpful. So thank you.
No, I really appreciate you doing what you do, and I think that it's going to be super beneficial for so many people out there.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll have to meet in person like next time you're in LA. I would love, or if I'm in New York, we have to meet up, obviously, because we also are represented by the same companies, so we share a lot of the same people in our worlds, in our inner circle. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Louise, and we will chat very soon. So
All
thanks
right.
so much. All
Thank
right,
you.
take
Have a good
care.
day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.